Today's story is not just about a war between two countries. It's about how it already impacted Indian students, fuel prices, trade routes and possibly your monthly budget. So in this video, I'll take you through what triggered the sudden escalation between Iran and Israel, how Indian students are being evacuated from Tehran, and most importantly, what all of this means for India's economy, fuel prices and your monthly budget. Hi, this is Khatija and you're watching the Free Press Journal. Today's story dives deep into one of the most dangerous flashpoints unfolding in the Middle East right now, the Israel-Iran conflict and what it could mean for us here in India. Let's begin firstly with why has the Israel-Iran conflict escalated? Well, in the last week, Israel carried out a series of surprise airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities and missiles bases. Iran retaliated by launching a wave of ballistic missiles towards Israeli cities like Tel Aviv and Haifa. These aren't just tit-for-tat attacks. This is a dangerous spiral that could drag the entire region into war. And here's the scary part. These strikes have already killed top Iranian generals and damaged strategic sites. So what's driving this sudden aggression? Well, Israel has long considered Iran's nuclear program an existential threat. When Iran made moves that crossed red lines, including moving enriched uranium and building long-range missile factories, Israel responded with force. Now Iran is threatening to respond harder. And one of those threats, blocking the Strait of Hormuz, more on than in 1 minute. Now let's come to the evacuation of Indian students from Tehran. While the bombs drops and missiles fly, India has swiftly moved to evacuate Indian citizens from the danger zones, especially from Tehran, Iran's capital. The Indian embassy in Iran released an urgent advisory saying all Indian nationals and PIOs, that means persons of Indian origin, who can move out of Tehran using their own resources are advised to do so and head to a safe location. Some students and family have already crossed into Armenia. A 24/7 control room has been set up by India's External Affairs Ministry, one each in Israel and Iran, to coordinate updates, provide support and track Indian nationals. But here's a serious question. If this conflict escalates, are we looking at a full-blown war? And what would that mean for India even if we are thousands of kilometers away? Now take a pause and let's look at the direct impact on our daily lives. Are petrol prices in India going to increase? To answer this, I will go to the basics. India imports about 80% of its crude oil needs. We are heavily dependent on the Middle East for fuel, including countries like Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE and yes, to some extent even Iran. Now here's the catch. Most of this oil passes through a very narrow sea route called the Strait of Hormuz, located between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. Around 20% of global oil and LNG trade flows through this passage. That means if Iran blocks this choke point or if shipping is disrupted due to missile threats, global oil supply chains will be hit hard. And we have already seen the initial tremors. Brent crude prices have jumped from $65 in May to over $78 per barrel. Experts say even a loss of 0.5% to 1 million barrels per day could spike prices by $5 to $10 per barrel. Now here's a question. When global crude gets expensive, what happens next? Petrol and diesel prices go up. So yes, India may see a temporary rise in fuel prices if this conflict continues. But that's not the only worry. Now I'm coming to, will inflation rise due to this conflict? Well, absolutely. Because when fuel becomes expensive, everything else does too. Transportation costs rise, air tickets become pricier. Essential goods, food, medicines, delivery items all become more expensive to move. Now according to economists, $10 increase in oil prices can raise inflation by 0.4% to 0.6%, even though India's current retail inflation is at 75-month low of 2.82%. Experts warn that this fragile stability could be broken. But here's the good news so far. Economists at S&P, MK Global and JM Financial say the price surge is a knee-jerk reaction and may cool down if the war de-escalates. Now importantly, coming to the point, Strait of Hormuz and why it matters so much. Let's go a bit deeper on this. The Strait of Hormuz is not just important to Iran, it's vital to the entire world's energy supply. around 20 to 25% of global crude oil. Second, one-third of global LNG, especially from Qatar and UAE, passes through this narrow waterway. Now imagine even a temporary blockage here means, first, global tankers are stuck. Second, oil deliveries get delayed. Freight and insurance costs go up. Lastly, supply chains break. So even if India doesn't import directly from Iran anymore, the ripple effects of a conflict there will hurt us indirectly through prices shocks, trade delays and inflation. Now how is India responding to this? Indian refiners are not waiting. They have already begun looking at alternative energy sources in West Africa and elsewhere. Government agencies are also reviewing energy risk scenarios and strategic oil reserves. There are reports that India's oil marketing companies are well positioned with strong gross refining margins, meaning they are still making a decent profit, at least for now. So while we are vulnerable, though we are not helpless. But what about the stock market? You may have already felt this. The Sensex dropped 573 points on this Friday. Why? Because investors fear higher oil prices, that means higher inflation. Higher interest rates, that means lower corporate profits. In simple words, war is bad for business. While sectors like energy may benefit short term, others like aviation, logistics, paint, pharmaceuticals, they may suffer if raw material or transport costs increase. Now, will this conflict drag on or will it de-escalate? That's the million-dollar question. While US President Donald Trump has called for evacuation and warned of a massive conflict, he has also expressed hope that Israel and Iran may reach a deal. And as of now, analysts believe that full-scale war is unlikely because global oil market is still oversupplied and Western nations won't let the Strait of Hormuz be blocked. In fact, Brent crude may stabilize at $70 to $80 per barrel if tensions cool down, but still the risk remains. Now let's recap. What should we watch closely now? First, crude oil prices, especially Brent. Second, the situation at the Strait of Hormuz. Third, Indian government's reserve planning. Fourth, any new missile exchanges between Iran and Israel. And most importantly, how long this crisis continues. See, as citizens, stay informed. As consumers, be ready for small cost increases. And as a nation, India must continue to diversify fuel imports, strengthen reserves and reduce over-dependence on Middle East routes. Because in a globalized world, even a war thousands of miles away can affect the price of your morning tea. So that's it. This is Khatija signing off. You were watching the Free Press Journal. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share and hit that subscribe button. Now let us know in the comments, do you think India is prepared for a global oil shock? And what should the government do next? Thank you for watching.